Best £100 ever spent. Basically paying people to design new clothes for me is great.
It looks good though, it looks comfy, it looks like good quality.
Yeah, it is. Maybe you should buy it in our merch store. It does make me feel like such a knob though when I'm out there. I go into a bathroom in office and people see me wearing a t-shirt with my fucking face on it. It's like, no, I'm wearing it for work, man. I'm not much of a douche. Fine, let's talk about Stephen Hawking, I suppose. Stephen Hawking was a guy who spent the majority of his life being referred to as the smartest man alive. A nickname I don't think Hawking minded, but would have probably preferred being used in tandem with one funny motherfucker. Something I say because Stephen Hawking, contrary to what you may believe, actually had a pretty cutting sense of humour.
I mean, you wouldn't think theoretical physicists, especially ones who are in wheelchairs, wouldn't have that sort of humour. And
especially ones who can't fucking talk. You know, like, contrary to like the hyper-anal, stuffy reputation of theoretical physicists that, like, you know, in the public consciousness and pop culture, Stephen Hawking was actually a pretty funny guy, and a lot of people who met him were surprised to learn that he had a really, really biting and witty and sarcastic sense of humour that often, like, you know, left them surprised, and he really did enjoy taking advantage of that, because obviously a lot of people who met Stephen Hawking either underestimated, you know, his ability to communicate owing to the fact he was in a wheelchair and communicated mostly via twitching muscles in his face. Because you wouldn't think a guy who spent a lot of his time lecturing like university students at the highest levels of their field on shit he himself discovered in the realms of theoretical physics would just lower himself to the point of making fart jokes and shit like that. But no, Stephen Hawking fucking loved that shit. But not only did he love that shit, he also enjoyed fucking with people who didn't expect him to love that shit. Because Stephen Hawking did not give a single theoretical fuck.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Have you got some of the examples of stuff he did?
Oh, Stephen Hawking just fucking with people. My absolute favourite, number one with a bullet, has to be, there was a long-running rumour in, like, you know, the world of science that Stephen Hawking will run over the toes of people he didn't like in his wheelchair and then play it off as an accident, because he knew that nobody is going to yell at a guy in a wheelchair, especially when it's a guy in a wheelchair who was usually the guest of honour at the event they were holding. And Stephen Hawking himself adamantly denied this rumour, but I would like to point out that while Stephen Hawking did deny running over people's toes, he denied it in such a way where it kind of made it seem like he was being sarcastic. Yeah. But you can't really tell, considering he didn't really have any feeling to his voice, which must have amused him endlessly, because when he was asked about this in an interview, he says, "Is it true, Professor Hawking? I know you don't have to comment if you don't want to, but I've heard that you run over people's toes if you disagree with them." I went, "No, it's a vicious, malicious rumour, and I'll run over anyone who repeats it." So I'm going to guess the truth is somewhere in the middle, because there's no way that rumour came out of nowhere. And I'm going to presume that if he could have done so, Stephen Hawking would have been smirking as he typed that fucking out. Because it comes across as so sarcastic, doesn't it? And I love that about him. That even though he could speak with barely any emotion in his voice whatsoever, he could be sarcastic. And it somehow came across as even more sarcastic when he did so. It's great.
If he uses his wheelchair to prank people, he must use the voice as well.
Oh yeah, he fucking loved using his voice synthesizers to mess with people. And there's more confirmed reports of him doing this, because he himself admitted to it, and there's first-hand accounts of people who witnessed him using it to mess with people. And one of the things he liked doing was leaving more pauses than necessary when typing out sentences, so the person would think he'd finished talking and then start talking himself, only for him to interrupt them, so they'd feel bad, which is just fucking beautiful, isn't it? He'd leave extra pauses so they think he'd stop talking, or he'd type out jokes ahead of time, and then he'd leave massive long gaps for the punchline and stuff like that, so people would feel awkward, which made him laugh. There was even a story where I think one of his kids snuck into his room and programmed loads of swear words into his voice box as well. There was just a day when he walked around swearing at everybody. And he was well known for as well, just not adjusting the volume. So he could insult people and pretend he wasn't, or say, "Oh, I made a mistake, I'm really sorry." I think once he was at a dinner party with one of the inventors of the hydrogen bomb. So Stephen Hawking did not like this man, and during the dinner, at one of the quietest moments, his voice box just started shouting out, "He is so stupid, he is so stupid, he is so stupid, he is so stupid," every time the guy tried to talk. And Stephen Hawking went, "Oh no, it's a mistake, I'm really sorry." So I didn't mean it. It's, oh no, oh God, what an accident, what a terrible mistake. I'll try and fix it right now. But who's gonna stand up and call him on that?
You're not.
You're not. And that's what he knew that. So he knew that people are going to treat me differently because I'm in a wheelchair. So I'm going to take advantage of that fact. Because fuck it, I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Like, what else am I going to do? I'm sat here all fucking day. I've already, changed the way we think about theoretical physics. Fuck it, I'm going to dedicate at least some of my time to pissing off those people who are going to treat me with kid gloves just because they think, oh no, he's in a wheelchair. So I'm going to run over their toes and make it feel awkward. And you know what? I love that shit. Anyone who can take advantage of something like that just is like A+ in my fucking book. Have you got any examples that you've enjoyed of people who may not have been dealt the greatest hand in life and using that fact to their advantage?
Well, there's that comedian, I can't remember his name, but
it's Adam something or other, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got
he doesn't have hands. He doesn't have working hands,
but he doesn't he make jokes about part of his
And then you have the Australian comedian who's got one of his legs missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an Australian comedian. I think he's mostly based in the UK now, but he has one of his legs missing. He says, one of my favourite things to do is fuck with people at airports. When they get when the beeper goes off and they get really gruff with me, like, what's going on here, sir? We told you, did you have any metal objects on you? No, I don't. And they'll pat him down, they'll feel the wooden leg, and they'll feel so bad about it. And obviously he doesn't give a fuck, he had a leg for years, he don't care. But he says, I love taking advantage of just that sympathy people feel, or that embarrassment. Because it's not my fucking fault, is it?
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable being around a disabled person, that's not on me, that's on you. I don't mind, you do. So fuck it. And it's so good. So there's some of the stories he's told. There was a great series of adverts put out by the British government, in fact, where they said, well, we need to remove the stigma from people who are disabled or have whatever disadvantages. And they released a series of adverts where it's a guy with one hand goes into a job interview. And it shows you from the perspective of the job interview of oh no. He goes out for the handshake. And then he realises, oh no, what do you do in this moment? It comes with a thing like, do you try and turn it into a fist bump? And stuff like that. It's like, no, just offer to shake the guy's hand with your other hand and just acknowledge the mistake and move on. But it just shows you all this crazy bullshit people try and do when they realise that. But the one that sticks in my head, just the guy walks in for a job interview and he's got a hand missing, and the guy goes and it zooms right and goes, what do you do in this situation?
Oh, God.
And the answer is just treat the guy like any other person and just shake him with your other fucking hand. It's not.
I think people they panic, don't they? And they just think.
And you overcompensate and try, and then you end up treating the person differently, which comes across as more fucking patronising. It's like there's so many stories out there about people in wheelchairs, of people who just try and push their wheelchair because they think they're helping. So, no, I know how to get around. I'm not fucking helpless. I know how to move.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when I was in Sheffield once and I saw a guy in his wheelchair fall over, and 40 people went over to the entire street. People ran across the road to try and help him.
God.
And he just went, I'm all right. And he just went, it happens all the time. I'm in a fucking wheelchair, my legs don't work. Just picked himself up, sat down, went, thank you everybody, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because obviously it must happen to him all the time. But it's just the idea that everyone runs out there and goes look, I'm fine.
But you don't want to not help.
And that's the thing, it's the optics of not choosing to help. So I would just stood there going like that. I felt like a right dickhead until I overheard the guy yell.
Yeah.
So, okay, fair enough. Because he must have that all the time. He just try and get fucking milk off the shelf and get someone just going, I'll get it for you, mate. It's that's fine, that's it. But they must get someone going, do you need any help?
Yeah.
So don't do that. Just grab it and give it.
It's sometimes it's like if you help, you feel bad because they don't want the help, but then if you don't help, you feel bad because you're like.
And that's where, although that series of adverts I thought were quite good, it's basically it's we're trying to educate people, just treat people with disabilities the same as you would anyone else. Obviously, make whatever accommodations are necessary.
Yeah.
You don't have to go above and beyond. Just let them. Just as long as you're treating them with respect and dignity, nothing more needs to be done because they're an employee, they're a friend, they're a stranger in the street. Treat them as such. But I do like the idea of people with those disadvantages using them to fuck with people by taking advantage of that thing people have in their head of oh no, I can't. I've got to be polite. I've got to be nice to this guy in a wheelchair. And Stephen Hawking's I'm going to run over his toes. Deal with it. Suck it. So one of the people he's supposed to do was Prince Charles. Because he thought, you know what? I'm going to do it. Fuck you, Prince Charles. There's loads of rumours. And obviously we can't really confirm any of them because now he's dead.
Yeah.
And obviously he denied it adamantly during his life before telling people he'd run them the fuck over, but we don't know. So to bring it back to Stephen Hawking, one of my favourite facts about him is that he could type, I think, 8 words per minute, which you would think would greatly limit someone's ability to, say, like dole out witty one-liners or comebacks. But no, Stephen Hawking, as you might expect for a guy who could write fucking books from that wheelchair, planned ahead, and he would write out one-liners and comebacks ahead of time and bust them out to dunk on people who just didn't know how to deal.
Do you have an example of some of the stuff he used to say?
Well, I think my favourite one is he was giving a lecture to a group of students, and a young girl nervously stood up and went to the microphone and said, Professor Hawking, I was just wondering if you would comment on the cosmological impact of Zayn leaving One Direction. And you think at this point, like, most other people in that situation would, like, you know, say, thank you for the question, that's not relevant, or they'd, like, politely ask the person to sit down, or maybe even, like, make fun of the young girl. No, Stephen Hawking, he sat there, and a few seconds later, the response came back, finally, a question about something important. And he used that as a jumping off point to talk about there being an idea in theoretical physics about there being multiple realities and different versions of our own universe, in which there would be versions of One Direction that had not broken up, and in one of which there must be a reality or a universe where that young girl was married to Zayn. And you know what? That's fucking adorable, isn't it? Like, the fact that he's in a fucking wheelchair, can type 8 words per minute, and he still manages to come out with that fucking answer while also weaving in a little nod to the original question while also making that little girl feel good. That's awesome.
That's really nice.
You don't see Neil deGrasse Tyson doing that shit, do you? He just like dunks on people on Twitter for getting like math shit wrong. You don't get all that shit with Stephen Hawking. It's like, you know what, girl? Yeah, One Direction is important because that's part of your universe. Yeah. There are comedians out there who don't think as fast as Stephen Hawking did, and the guy could only type like one sentence. Ooh, squeeze me. One sentence per minute. You know what? Fuck it, that's going in as well. Bollocks to it. But here's the thing though, Nisha, because withering one-liners and awesome comebacks weren't just the only thing in Stephen Hawking's comedic repertoire, because he also loved practical jokes.
Of course.
Of course he fucking did. And do you want to know what the best practical joke he ever pulled is?
Go on.
He threw a party for time travellers. But what he did is he announced the party the day after he threw it. You're probably thinking, oh, it's probably a joke he said in an interview, or it's just something he put in a press release to advertise a new book. But no, according to people who knew him, he got champagne and put it on ice and got canapes and all that bullshit and sat in the room for an hour. And then and after the hour, obviously he got all the food cleared away. And then he announced it the next day and said, I was really disappointed because nobody turned up. Just fucking yes. Just throwing a party for time travellers, man. And he bought champagne. That's fucking awesome. But just to prove a point, so you never know. That's the best one, isn't it? But he's a fucking hero.
He appeared on The Simpsons, didn't he?
Yeah, he did a few times, and he would report later in his life that people know me more as the man from The Simpsons than they do for my work as a theoretical physicist, and I don't mind because I love that show. And as you might imagine, given everything else I've said today about his love of humour and jokes, he really did enjoy being on The Simpsons, and it's reported that whenever he happened to be in LA for a conference or a lecture or something like that, he would randomly turn up to the studio and sit in on script readings. And the staff, obviously, this is Stephen fucking Hawking, of course he can come in. And he would just sit in the back of the room listening and sometimes suggest jokes of his own, which were, according to the writers, like, pretty fucking funny.
Yeah.
So they said, like, yeah, he's in there and he's sitting up with some of like the finest comedy writers in the business and he's holding his fucking own. He's dropping all sorts of lines and jokes and all that crap. And they said, just every now and again, we just have someone from reception say, Stephen Hawking is here. Is he recording an episode today? No. But let him in. And he'd just wheel himself up and just sit there and just, like, you know, enjoy the jokes and he'd join the banter and all that shit. Isn't that fucking awesome? So good.
So good.
And he was the only person, apparently, as well, they let do it. It's a lot of the writers for The Simpsons, I think Futurama as well, he'd turn up for some of theirs, because a lot of the staff on Futurama were physicists and mathematicians themselves. I think there's a line from one of the producers saying, oh, it's the smartest collection of writers ever brought together for a cartoon. And he'd turn up some of theirs and just shoot the shit with them for a couple of hours and then go to his lecture or whatever in the evening. But he knew that, I'd like to think though, that he would secretly just accept lecture offers for the LA so he could go to the Simpsons offices and hang out. And to bring my own opinion into it a little bit, I think one of the reasons that Stephen Hawking liked hanging out with the Simpsons writers is because they just treated him like another comedian. They spoke to him like he was just like, you know, just offering lines like anyone else. They offered him feedback, criticism. They didn't treat him with kid gloves or anything like that. And he said, well, I respect him so much that there is nothing they can do with my character that I will object to, save for One joke they suggested where he was drunk with Homer. So I don't agree with that, but anything else you want to do with my character, any situation you want to put me in, I'm happy with it. Which is why there are jokes in there, right? I'm like stealing theories from other scientists, which is continued into Futurama, where he also steals Fry's idea, like he did Homer's. And I think one of the things he loved the most was like the boxing glove that they put into his fucking wheelchair, which he used to joke about during his speeches. He'd say, oh yeah, most of you know me from The Simpsons. Luckily, I don't have a boxing glove in my wheelchair, although I'm working on it right now. It's like, yes, fucking yes, Stephen. Fucking get on it, lad. There's just something about, though, one of the most eminently recognisable figures in physics and in pop culture, I'd argue, because everyone knew who fucking Stephen Hawking is, just rolling up the street and going into the Simpsons headquarters. And like the receptionist going, go on, Stephen, they're in there, you know where to go, mate. And rolls right up, they're fucking too right. And then he walks in and it's like, all right, Stephen, you know where it is. You know the drill, get on it, mate.
I just imagine him going in going, sup, bitches.
Oh, he could. The thing is, he couldn't get away with it. And for anyone wondering, yes, that's why Stephen Hawking ended up having helicopter blades hidden within his wheelchair in that one Simpsons episode, because he just didn't give a fuck what they did. So sticking with the idea of people that most would assume would be quite serious, of having like a really wicked sense of humour, are there any other celebrities or famous people who have something similar that spring to mind for you?
I guess you could say Obama.
Oh man,
Like, you wouldn't really expect a president to be.
Yeah, like the esteem of the office, like the weight and the mantle you have to carry. And then there's all the pictures of him like pretending to be Spider-Man in the office with kids and shit. Or the one of him like is someone getting weighed and he's putting his like foot on the scale, so they think they're like 40 stone or some shit like that.
So it just shows like they can just have a laugh and just down to earth. It just makes them more human, I think. We
spoke about it in another video. He used to play basketball with a lot of his Secret Service and all that shit, and he'd get annoyed if they didn't foul him. He says, I'm not the president on the court, I'm Barack. Fucking bring it. And there's a lot of stories people say, yeah, he was really down to earth and he'd speak to just anyone. Like I think about the custodians came in to like empty his bin. He'd talk to them and say, oh, hello, Mr. President. So how are you today? And you don't expect to hear stories about someone just in that position of power just being that normal, I suppose. Well, similar to Obama, the Queen is apparently quite funny behind the scenes, but she doesn't really showcase it that much because obviously when she's in public, she's the regent. She has to, carry herself with a certain level of decorum. But when people manage to catch private, intimate moments, she's quite funny, according to people who would have that experience. Like there's the famous video of them bringing the crown jewels in. During an interview, and like the interviewer's like, oh my god, it's the crown jewels, and they bring him in with like silk gloves and put it down in front of her, and obviously the Queen, it's my fucking crown, starts picking at it with her fingers and pointing to the various jewels on it and just picks it up like it's nothing. And there's stories like sometimes when she gets new staff, she'll wear her crown to breakfast to freak them out. So like they'll walk in and expect to see like an old woman, no, she's wearing the fucking crown at breakfast or some shit like that. Or she apparently has like 3 gin and tonics a day as well. And this might be a story about her or the Queen Mother. I forget who the person was, but there was it was an open secret that a lot of like her personal servants and assistants were gay. And they're having a conversation once. Oh, when you old queens are finished having a laugh, this one wants a drink. Get me a gin and tonic. It's like, yeah, go on, Queen. And she still does, like drives her Land Rover around her estate and occasionally gets pulled over by the police. And then there's another one where she goes abroad. She doesn't need a passport because obviously all passports are granted in it's basically a message from the Queen saying, let this person travel beyond the borders of the United Kingdom. Yeah. She don't need that. She's the fucking Queen. And when she goes to like security, if they don't recognise her, say, okay, profession, she goes, Queen. It's like fucking too right, Your Majesty, get on it, love.
Was it when it was like the Olympics or something?
Oh yeah,
she did the skydive thing.
She didn't do the skydive,
but she pretended to do it. Something
so
like
people didn't watch the Olympics 2012. The Queen was asked. Obviously, you're the Queen, this enduring symbol of Britain. You need to be involved in some way. Would you like to do a skit with Daniel Craig? And she said, yeah, okay then, whatever. And turned up, and she did the skit. She turned up for a day of filming and hung out with James Bond. It's fucking awesome.
So
oh man. There was another story like a journalist once met her for lunch and obviously he'd say, you know what, I'm going to do whatever the Queen does because that's probably the polite thing to do. And she pulled out like 3 fucking giant breadsticks during lunch. So he picked up one and nibbled on it throughout the meal. And at the end of the meal, the corgis came in. She fed each corgi a breadstick and just turned to him and went, so, what are you going to do with yours? And I think it's like an interview said, "Oh, so Your Majesty, what do you keep in your purse?" And she just happily showed off a suction cup with a hook on it. And it's, why is you got a suction cup in your purse? And she's, "Oh, I'll show you." And she sticks it to the table and hangs a purse on it so her dogs can't get into her purse. And that image just cracks me the fuck up. This woman, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, like she can order a nuclear strike and no one can override her. And she's just sat there going, "Oh, cool, look at this neat thing I have." Boop, and puts a handbag on it and just really proud of that fact. It's like, yeah, fucking go for it, Your Majesty. Not even bothered. No fucks given.
It's just weird to like imagine the Queen doing mundane things. Like you said, her driving a Land Rover. I can't imagine her driving.
Just driving around Balmoral,
behind the wheel,
not gearing a foot. Well, as well, there's that story where a wedding was happening in London. They invited the Queen as a laugh. Said, "Oh, we're getting married tomorrow, Your Majesty. We thought you might want to check in. We heard you're doing a visit nearby." And the letter got through to her somehow by one of her aides. And she said, "Oh, I'll go. I'll turn up." And she did. She turned up to their fucking wedding.
Oh, imagine that.
Yeah, it was only for like 10 minutes to say hello.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Well, you know what? Fuck it. I'm the Queen. I can do what I want." And apparently her aides tried to advise her against it. She said, "No, I'm going. I'm the Queen." And just turned up.
You can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, you can't, can you? Who's gonna fucking tell? What do you want to do today, Your Majesty? I want to go to that random fucking wedding that I got invited to. She reminds me, like, so many stories of stuff. I think Iron Maiden once got invited to a couple's wedding. The husband was like a really big fan of Iron Maiden, so he wrote the band a letter saying, "Oh, would you mind coming to my wedding and playing?" And they went, "Fuck it, yeah, we'll go." And they turned up because they were on tour nearby, so they drove over and put on a free show at their wedding. It's like, yes.
That's amazing because I think a lot of people were probably writing for stuff like that and not really expecting anything to come of it.
Exactly,
just
yes.
like, oh yeah, why not? Let's just what we got to lose.
Yeah. But just the thinking that someone invited the Queen to their fucking wedding. She turned up for the banter. You know what? That's a woman I'm proud of my fucking money right there. Turns up for the bants.
Queen of Bants.
Oh man, she is. Archbishop of Banterbury. Let's go.